Yes, I am aware of the irony of wearing a Grogu shirt doing a Star Trek review. My original shirt got a stain on it right before I did the video, so here we are. Either way, hello everyone, it is I, MintySquidz, and I'm here for the latest review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2, Ad Astra Perispera. Wow, this episode was great. Oh my god, was this episode great. So, like I've been doing with the reviews, both of Strange New World and Secret Invasion, that I just started doing as well, I'll do a non-spoiler section up first, and then go into spoilers. I'm going to tell you right now, the non-spoiler section, probably going to be pretty short this week, because a lot of this is just spoiler-filled, and I really want to talk about some of it, and I can already tell you off the jump, I am probably not the most qualified person to talk about this stuff, but wow, was this some good stuff in this. But either way, Star Trek's great. I love Star Trek, and I am so happy this show is airing right now. I am so happy this show is on the air. But either way, so let's just get right into the actual review then. So non-spoilers up first. So non-spoilers right here, everyone. So my initial thoughts of this episode are just wow. Just absolutely wow. And, so I'm a more recent Star Trek fan. I've been around Star Trek my whole life, as I've mentioned in other videos, but I'm more of a recent watcher of Star Trek and more recent Star Trek fan. But I am aware of certain episodes that are, top tier episodes for the series, for the whole franchise. Measure of a Man, The Drumhead, stuff like that. The other courtroom drama episodes. And Ad Astra Perispera is the courtroom drama episode for the series, for Strange New World, dealing with the fallout from the end of Season 1, where Una was taken prisoner, or was taken into custody, not prisoner, whatever, taken into custody by Starfleet because she's an Illyrian, and Illyrians are genetically modified, basically from birth, and that breaks Federation laws, that she's, genetically modified because of the eugenics wars. So, this is the episode dealing with the fallout of that, which everyone thought was going to be Episode 1, turned out Episode 1 was more of an action-y episode, which I understand why, gets more people to watch it, gets more people interested, invested. This is the episode, though, where this is Star Trek. This episode is 100% Star Trek. Hitting at all cylinders, hitting at its absolute best. Ad Astra Perispera is Star Trek. In the most simplest form, this episode is what Star Trek is. It is a social commentary on things that are happening in contemporary time, but also things that have been happening in the real world throughout time. And it is a perfect science fiction story where it takes a concept that is science fiction and it uses that as a metaphor to explain and to discuss contemporary issues in a way that a lot of people can understand, because it's a metaphor. That's what metaphors are for. And this episode does it so beautifully and so perfectly that it's a little difficult to talk about without talking about the episode. So that's just going to be it. Other non-spoiler stuff is just the acting in this episode is completely and utterly next level. It is top tier acting from everyone involved, and the writing in this episode is so beautiful. The dialogue is so beautiful. Hell, the shot composition actually is really beautiful too, and really, really well done. Just a simpler thing as this shot composition is just really well done. It just helps to heighten the aspects of this episode. But that's going to be the non-spoiler part, because there's not really much else I can say without getting into spoilers. So, non-spoiler review of the episode, one of the best episodes I've ever seen of Star Trek, and easily in the top tier of all Star Trek of all time, in general. And if the rest of the season of Stranger Worlds can hit on even equal levels or anywhere near levels of this episode, we're in for a phenomenal rest of the season, and I am excited to see that. So, with that out of the way, let's get into spoiler review. Let's get into the spoilers. So, spoilers here for everyone. Spoilers here. So, in 3, 2, 1, Star Trek. So, spoilers for this episode. This episode is dealing with, as I mentioned before, is dealing with the fallout of the end of Season 1, with Una and her trial. However, from the broader perspective of this episode is dealing with the systemic issues and systemic discrimination of marginalized people. And it is doing it in the most beautiful way possible by using the Illyrians, and Una specifically, as the metaphor and the stand-in for many different marginalized groups. And the way that Una herself describes how her upbringing and how she had to deal with a lot of discrimination growing up, you can very, very easily connect them to many different marginalized groups. Now, the main one that you kind of get a little bit more that they were referring to is the LGBTQ plus community, QA plus community. There's a lot of letters there. I am part of it. There's a lot of letters there. I have a hard time with letters. But the LGBTQA plus community, because that is a major movement right now. That's a major civil rights movement right now. And that group is kind of what, at least for me, is what I was seeing that the episode was metaphorically speaking to in a lot of ways. There's certain language, like with Nira, who is the lawyer that's helping Una, who was her friend growing up, uses that Una is a passing Illyrian. She's able to be a passing Illyrian because she can hide her genetic modifications more than other Illyrians can. So it's a passing thing, which is something that you can see a lot in the queer community as well, in the gay community, or the trans community, where like you can be a passing one of the community, where like you look cisgender, you look straight, which is a very, very big deal, very important thing to talk about. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm not going to talk about the full episode in like bit by bit like I did last week. I'm just going to talk about just individual parts of it. First off, Pike is actually in this episode. Anson Mount, the best. Pike is the best, and he is one of the best allies you can possibly imagine. He is the picture-perfect representation of what a beautiful ally should be for any of these marginalized communities, where he literally is risking his life to help his friend and his partner, Una. He is literally risking his life. He goes to a planet that he knows he cannot survive on and he cannot breathe on, with a very limited oxygen supply, just for the simple fact of, I am getting the best lawyer for my friend who actually knows her and can help her in the situation. And he is willing to die for that. He is willing to sit there and die. And he almost does. He almost does. He's basically playing chicken with the receptionist, and he wins. But Pike is the best, and I do find it very interesting how in this episode they do try and bring Pike into the actual courtroom situation, and multiple people are like, no, you should not do this, because if you get involved in this, it's going to become about you, and we don't want that to happen, because then it gets into a whole different issue where the whole Enterprise crew gets brought into this, and this is about Una, not about you or the Enterprise. So that's a big deal. But Pike is very, very accepting of this. He's like, yes, I understand that. I'm just going to be over here. I'm just going to be over here helping the best I can. Good job on you, Pike. Then we get into the actual episode itself. Starts off with a flashback of Una in her childhood. Very rough. We get to learn more about this much later on in full detail, very heartbreaking detail. We get to learn about that more. However, what we get to find out then is that Starfleet are basically trying to offer a deal to Una, where they're like, hey, you can accept this deal, you'll leave Starfleet, we'll just completely wipe this off from the records, you'll be able to be free, and you just can never join Starfleet again. Just nothing ever happened, no one ever has to know. And Una rightfully is like, no, I'm not doing that. And even Pike's like, good, she didn't do that. And the reason why is because Starfleet's trying to cover their asses. And basically say like, oh, we didn't know she was an Illyrian, so we're just gonna not say she never was in Starfleet, when clearly she was in Starfleet. And just completely wipe her from the record books, just wipe their hands clean of it completely, and nothing gets resolved. Like, nothing gets resolved at all, which is not good. That's not how you get change. That's not how you actually have social change to happen in the world, is by just accepting this deal and moving on. And she rightfully doesn't do it. So then it goes to full trial after some conversations are had between Pike and the other lawyer as well, whose name I've forgotten for. I'll put it on the screen here. But there's some conversation there. Then it gets escalated once the actual lawyer brought in Nira, and it gets escalated more from there, where then Starfleet's like, cool, we're actually going to get you on trial, and we're going to basically send you to prison because you basically were lying intentionally on your application, and we are going to say you were breaking the law, because the law is that a genetically modified person cannot be in Starfleet because of the eugenics war with Khan and all of them, which we'll get into Khan. Khan actually does come back up in a bit, surprisingly, and he comes back up with La'an. So we'll come back to him in a little bit. And then we get into the actual courtroom drama, where Nira doesn't really want to help Una because Una left the Illyrians, and Pike is able to convince her, like, no, do this. If you do this, it's going to be a very public case. if you can use this if we win, which hopefully we're going to win. You can then use this case as a basis to then go back to your other cases that got thrown out for lack of evidence, lack of details. You can then use this case as a basis to then build from, to then help later on, which is how it happens in the real world too. It's how it happens in our modern justice system, if things work out well. However, once we get into the actual courtroom, then it's very intriguing, because this whole court case is not just about Una being a genetically modified person. It's about fundamentally asking the question of Starfleet: if you have laws in place, if the Federation has laws in place that are broken and unjust laws, then what is the point of them? Then what is the point of them other than to just bolster your own discrimination? And if the laws themselves are broken, then what is the point of having those laws there? Which is a very big thing. And Nira goes onto this point a lot. To the point where, like, she even gets Admiral April's testimony completely thrown out because she is hammering in this point so much, which it all comes back. It all comes back full circle, and Nira is phenomenal this episode. Like, oh my god, she is a phenomenal lawyer in this episode. And also the fact that it is specifically said that Nira is a civil rights lawyer and not some made-up sci-fi term for her. She is a civil rights lawyer. So the writers knew what they were doing with this too. They knew exactly what they were doing with this, which is the whole point. They knew what they were doing. During this whole thing as well, La'an is feeling really guilty about it, because she thinks that she's the problem. She thinks she's the one who somehow leaked Una was an Alarian by, someone stealing her private logs or whatever, because she said it after she found out, and she felt very upset, very sad, very angry about it, because Una didn't tell her. And Una's one of her oldest colleagues, one of her oldest friends, and she felt angry that Una didn't trust her enough to tell her. And it wasn't that simple. But also, the fact that La'an her full name is La'an Noonien Singh, a relative of Khan Noonien Singh. There's also a bit of some subtext there as well, if you look into it, where she also feels guilty the fact that she comes from a lineage of genetic modification and is allowed in the Starfleet. Now, does she have genetic modifications? We don't know. We don't exactly know. As far as we know, she doesn't. And that is even brought up in the episode as well. It's like, she is a Noonien Singh, so she has relation to Khan, but we don't know if those genetics actually passed on that far to her, or how in relation she is to Khan. We don't actually know for a fact. She says, I believe she says at some point in the series she's a distant relative of Khan, but it depends how far does the genetics go from Khan. So, is she genetically modified or not? We don't know. We don't know. But beyond all that, she does feel guilty. And the subtext there is that she's kind of representing the self-hating gay or queer, where she feels it as well, but she's projecting all the negativity onto herself. And there's a phenomenal line, an exchange between her and Nira about people that are modified, or people that are genetically altered. And obviously the subtext is there for a much bigger thing, how they're not born a monster. They just have the capacity to do actions just like everyone else does, and that society looks down upon them so much that they start looking down upon themselves. And it's like, holy shit, this episode. Oh my god. I'm going through a lot of stuff right now. There's a lot of stuff in this episode. But just that exchange alone kind of sums up what this episode's talking about, and holy shit. And it's true. It's true. Like, society looks at certain groups of people and they marginalize them so much, and they start downing on them so much that they start downing on them themselves. That happens so much in the LGBT community, and it's hard. It's hard to see that. It's hard to look at that. And the fact that this show is actually pointing this out in a science fiction manner, but is pointing that out very specifically, it's amazing. It's amazing that they're doing that. We're going through, we get some testimonies from the rest of the Enterprise crew, from specifically Spock and Benga and La'an, about Una's character. They all go pretty great, and they basically all just say, like, yeah, Una's great. She's a great first officer. We learned so much from her. She's basically family. Spock actually has a funny joke in there as well, where they're like, were you ever expecting her hiding anything? And Spock is like, yes, I did expect that she was hiding something, and it was her love of a certain musical type. And then Una starts smiling, and it's actually a reference to the short treks where Una is singing one of the songs from one of the musicals by that person. I completely forgot. I completely didn't write the notes down. I just wrote that down, Spock being funny. And yeah, it was a pretty funny Spock joke that references the short trek. But then it gets on, and Nira has this plan. She has the plan the whole time, and she gets Una actually on the stand to do a testimony and talk about her childhood, and actually say, what was your childhood like? And Una goes into this incredibly heartbreaking story, which honestly so many different marginalized people have heard bits and pieces of the story because they've lived it their entire life, of her culture was being erased and that people were talking about it in school, and that's when like bullying started because it was already there systemically to bully or to down on these marginalized people. And then it led to them people being assaulted in the streets, to be teased, called names, spray painted on their homes. All the meanwhile, the Federation was allowing this because they're the ones who put the laws in place. Federation, this utopian society, this utopian thing, allowed this to happen. It then led to the point where like they couldn't even go to the doctors because the doctors wouldn't see them. Certain stores have them as customers because of the fact that they were modified. And it then led to the point where Una almost died of a broken leg, a very easy thing to fix at that time, almost died of a broken leg because she was an Alarian and certain doctors wouldn't even see her. And then it led to the point of Alarians being put in ghettos as well and being separated from everyone else. And this is what led to the rift between her and Nira, where she and her family left the Alarians because they were basically passing as normal or as normal, and the other Alarians didn't do that. And it led to a very amazing, very heartfelt scene of Una publicly apologizing to Nira in the story as well during her own testimony, which is great. By the end of it, it basically led, I'm going to skip over a few things as well, some court stuff that happened, but what it led to by the end is Nira arguing the point of using an actual physical book. It's an actual physical book. There is a law written in the Federation code, like uniform code, that if a person is going through extreme hardships and qualifies after different steps, then they can basically seek asylum. And the asylum that they can seek is from Starfleet. And looking back at everything that was said, and it's also by Captain Discretion, looking back on everything that was said in the entire episode, both like Admiral April's testimony, the crew, the character witnesses, and then Una's own story herself, and the specific words she said in the story, it led to basically Nira being like, Una didn't out herself as a Valerian. She was finishing her qualifications to ask for asylum from the Federation, with the Federation being the prosecutors and the ones who were discriminating against her. And it led to the Council being like, yes, that's true, so we'll grant her asylum. And the overall issue will have to be talked about a different day, because that's the whole thing about civil rights, is like, you need to just keep discussing it, you need to keep bringing it up, you need to keep fighting for what's right. And yeah, the whole battle for the Illyrians and for the genetically modified people being in Starfleet wasn't won, and even it's not even finalized or won by Deep Space Nine. Like, it's not even finalized by that point, and we know this from Deep Space Nine with Bashir. It's a start. It's a start, and Nira can even use the case for other cases as well, which is a big deal. And it ends with Una coming back to the ship, getting a standing ovation from the whole crew, or the main cast of the crew, and Nira getting the same thing, and a very lovely speech there by Nira, saying how impactful it is to see Una leading this crew, being an Illyrian. And it's, there was so much in this episode, so much in this episode, and they go full bore into it. And like I said before, I'm not the one necessarily to talk about this, even if I am in the LGBT community, both in the community as one of the letters, a few of them actually, and also an ally as well to many a marginalized person. And I'm not qualified, I don't feel like, to talk about all this stuff a lot, like with an educated manner. But being part of the community, seeing something like this, and seeing how well done it was and how perfect it was done is so impactful on so many levels. And the fact that it was Star Trek that did it, and Star Trek did it so beautifully, means the world. It just means the absolute world. And it's why I love this show so much. The fact that they can do episodes like this. They can have an episode like this, and then they can have an episode in season 1 where they basically do a Renaissance fair because they're talking to a sentient, like, space cloud. Like, they can do both. Like, both can happen. This episode was honestly perfect. It was honestly just perfect in every way. This episode, the amount of times I wrote holy shit in the actual notes here is impressive, because it was beautiful. It was a beautiful episode. I can't really say much more. I'm already repeating myself like ad infinitum here for this. It was just a beautiful episode. If you haven't watched anything of Star Trek, I highly recommend just watching this episode alone, and you can get a perfect summation of what Star Trek truly is about in just this. And it is beautiful. It is just absolutely beautiful, and I had a couple of tears in my eyes, I will say. It takes a lot for me to cry, and I had some tears welling up in me from this episode. So this was Ad Astra per Aspera. It was a phenomenal episode. Go watch it. Strange New Worlds continues to live up to being one of the best, if not the best, Star Trek series of all time, in my personal opinion, having not actually watched all the Star Trek series. But, that's just my little take on it. Let me know down in the comments as well what you think about this episode and all that it was talking about, representing as well, and how great of an episode it was, and just how it made you feel, just how this episode made you feel. And if you like this review and you want to see more, leave a like and subscribe as well. I am doing a lot more reviews of this sort and this type, along with reaction videos to Avatar: The Last Airbender as well, which has been a very fun series to react to for a whole different reason than Star Trek, and try to do video essays as well. So if you want to see more of those, definitely subscribe and get notified or whatever for all that good stuff. It definitely does help out. I mean, a lot to me for the channel as well. Right over here is going to be a playlist for the other review series I'm doing right now, Secret Invasion. Go ahead and watch that too. Also political, completely different type of political stuff going on in that series. Completely different. And over here is going to be a video that YouTube recommends for you as well. And until next time, just live long and prosper, and love all your people, and love who you love. And I'll see you next time, everyone. Peace.